The first character in Japanese massage an is the character is literally broken down with three radicals, but it means, or is translated to touch with a mother's love. And we know that touching, that stimulates that oxytocin production that's released from the skin that's going to create that bonding and caring and feeling of being taken care of. And then it also has effects being drawn into the bloodstream once the oxytocin is released, and that influences the lymphatic system and builds T cells and my blood cell count.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. A patient referred to my clinic room as a blueprint of a space that is welcoming, safe, and trustworthy. She called it a refuge. I needed to let that sink in for a moment. Refuge. That's a pretty strong word. I'd not thought of my practice as being described that way. It's not a way that I would talk about my clinic on my website, nor would I say I see my practice that way, because it feels just a bit ostentatious. But this patient, she has the forthright honesty of a person who's living through the decline of a neurodegenerative disease, and she has no space for anything but the truth of her experience. So when she said refuge, I had to take that seriously. But refuge, oh man, that's a tall order, and I'm not sure I want the kind of responsibility that goes with that. I imagine it requires a steady supply of empathy, strength, and possibly ferocity in creating and upholding boundaries. I imagine it might put me in harm's way, like refuge cities that incur the wrath of those in power who have different ideas about immigration policy, or the risks of those who provided way stations on the Underground Railroad from slavery to freedom. But when I sit with this particular patient, I get it that the time we spend together is a sort of respite, a time not to fight the disease, but live with it, and to allow for what meaning comes from a moment of being with and going through. Some things are not curable. Old age and decline, it's not something to fight, but perhaps more to inhabit. And in the world of conventional medicine, where all illness is seen as a battle, an opportunity to instead pause, see how life is now, allow as the world slowly comes apart, allow for grace, for insight, for steady-eyed not looking away from loss, for accompanying as the world comes slowly and surely apart. Yes, I begin to see how being with an illness instead of fighting it allows her the opportunity to share, as a child might discover butterflies, just how it is right now. How we are with our patients is not separate from what we do with needles in service of trying to be helpful. There is a place for words, stories, and the natural history of an illness, but the body itself has a wordless history written into it. You can see it in the posture or gait. It can also be felt in the tensegrity of the tissues. There is an aspect of all of us that lives wordlessly in the body, and being able to inquire and listen to the body through palpation is a way to better understand some of our patients that won't be revealed through the 10 questions or really any other narrative dialogue. In this conversation with Slate, Burris, Rick Gold, and Mark Petruzzi, we explore some of the ways palpation allows us to directly interact with the soma of our patients, and how developing a palpatory vocabulary allows us to connect with our patients in ways that words more often than not would obscure. These three practitioners have very different ways of using touch to connect and assess, and I suspect that in the end, we each need to develop our own ways of using this kind of sensing. So let's hear from a few gentlemen who have been using their hands to connect and treat their patients. We'll get into it right after a few important messages from the folks who make it possible for you to enjoy Geological. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members, All the sponsors here provide helpful products or services that you'll find beneficial in your clinical work. Do you like working with palpatory diagnosis and have a taste for how the classics describe acupuncture? Slate Burris has a foundations class in neoclassical acupuncture coming up next month. Heal your patients and dramatically reduce the amount of trash that your clinic generates. AcuFast needles help you do that. Mayway Herbs is celebrating the new year by focusing on restorative tonic formulas that help with cognition and burnout. And later in the show, you'll hear how Jane's suite of clinical management tools makes office management a breeze, and why Blue Poppy is the place to go for fine handcrafted teishin and other Japanese acupuncture tools. Be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to see all the special offers that our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast.
Hi, I'm Kylie Roger, and I practice neoclassical acupuncture, a palpatory style which gives you instant feedback. This style has made me more present, more precise, and it's elevated my clinical results, and I'm not alone in this. Here's what other practitioners have to say.
The neoclassical skills that I learned have really streamlined the way that I make my diagnoses, which result in a faster treatment. The patients like it, they like the results, and I'd recommend it for anyone that wants to add another skill set to their toolbox.
Practicing neoclassical acupuncture has been a life-changing experience for myself and my practice. I've seen remarkable results in my patients and gained greater confidence as a practitioner. I highly recommend.
Neoclassical acupuncture has completely changed my practice, and I love the amazing and lasting results that I see with the medicine.
Start your journey with neoclassical acupuncture with the Foundations course next month. Visit neoclassicalacupuncture.com to register for the Foundations course in February. I don't know about you, but sometimes I take a step back and marvel at my acupuncture needles. They are the world's simplest medical tool, a sharpened wire and a handle. With this simple tool, hundreds of health conditions can be resolved. I love it. What I didn't love was the amount of packaging waste made from conventional single and bulk package needles. Also, my old bulk package needles often came with a tube that I didn't use, and the needles would sometimes spill out of the open pouch. When I switched my clinic to AcuFast earth-friendly needles, I reduced my clinic AcuTrash by up to 93%, and there were no more wasted tubes. Plus, the simple and innovative AcuClip accessory meant no more spilled needles. Like our simple needle, making a positive impact on our environment is simple too. Start by requesting your free custom AcuFast needle sample with AcuClip by visiting acufastneedles.com/Qiological.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. The start of a new year is a time of transition. After months of outward movement and depletion, January invites us to turn inward, rebuild, and nourish what will sustain us over the long term. Throughout January, our focus is on tonic formulas, with special attention to cognition, burnout, and the kind of deep support that helps the body and mind adapt to change. In our newsletter and Chinese Medicine Matters podcast, we'll be exploring Chinese medicine approaches to brain health as well as adrenal fatigue, and how our medicine understands depletion and recovery. Since 1969, Mayway Herbs has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. Our Plumflower brand line includes pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, alongside educational resources designed to support thoughtful, effective clinical practice. Visit us at Mayway.com to explore our offerings, sign up for our newsletter, and listen to Chinese Medicine Matters. From all of us here at our family business, deep thanks for your continued trust and support.
Hey, Qiological friends. Welcome to today's episode. I'm delighted to tell you that I've got 3 people with me today. I've got Mark Petruzzi, Rick Gold, Slate Burris, and the subject today is palpation. All of these guys are really keen on hands-on work, and I think hands-on work is amazing stuff. I've got a lot of questions about it. It's something I've been working with, ever since I've been doing this, and it's one of those aspects of our medicine that I find completely fascinating, and I wish I was a heck of a lot better at it. So I brought in the 3 gentlemen decoction to talk about palpation. I'd like to begin what brought you to this, and in this case, not what brought you to acupuncture, but what got you involved in hands-on palpatory work with acupuncture. And I'll begin with the Professor Emeritus, Rick Gold.
Okay, thank you, Michael. It's great to be with you, Mark and Slate. When I graduated from the New England School of Acupuncture in 1978, and I loved my training there, but there were certain aspects that were definitely deficient, and one of them was psychology. And I learned about a program in San Diego, a city I had never even visited, in what was called a doctoral program in holistic, remember this is the 70s, holistic psychology. We would call it integral psychology or integrative medicine now. But the emphasis was on body psychology, and it was deriving inspiration from Wilhelm Reich, who was a contemporary of Freud and Jung in Vienna in those years. Through his disciple, Alexander Lowen, it combined the work of Ida Rolf and Rolfing. Ashley Montague had written about touching. It was sprinkled with the human potential movement. It was highly influenced by Esalen. This was a very visionary program, and I loved it. And the first part of it was a basic massage therapy program. And something really clicked for me. I think ultimately when I studied neurolinguistic programming, I realized that I was a kinesthetic dominant, and that touch was one of the most ways I take in the world. And it just resonated with me. It was a wonderful program. I actually did my doctoral dissertation research on holistic massage therapy training and how it affected personality and self-image. And then what happened, I won't go too long, but what happened is without planning, in 1986, I went on a sabbatical, self-generated sabbatical that included time in Japan. And actually, I was in Hong Kong first. And in Hong Kong, the acupuncturist, Dr. C.K. Butt, Gary Butt, who I was observing, his mentor, teacher, a Qigong master, and a physicist, introduced me to a shiatsu master, a sensei in Japan, who brought me in as a student without me even asking. So the synchronicity of life just brought me to a master teacher. And he taught me his program of what was called Seitai Shiatsu. It was a therapeutic upon westernizing it in my mind. It was a lymphatic style, and he was treating terminally ill patients in residential treatment centers. And he taught me his work. Subsequently, I published a book in this with Singing Dragon. And then after that, a few years later, I went to Thailand. And I went to Thailand to pursue my interest in yoga, Buddhist culture, and food. Ultimately, I became the owner and president of the massage school I had studied at, but I never heard of Thai massage. This is in the late 80s. And when I experienced Thai massage, it was just for my own relief from travel. It was a voila moment. I mean, Thai massage combined my interest in yoga, my interest in meditation and mindfulness with touch. And it became a loving obsession to explore this further. So within a year, I went back to Thailand and enrolled in a program there, an English language program in Chiang Mai. And one reason I'm so into palpatory work is because I think it connects me and many people to our intuition and the synchronicities that life has to offer. And the teachers and programs and experiences that came to me in touch reaffirmed that. And it created this creative circle for me of learning, experiencing, and doing, and then teaching and writing and loving.
Wow. The power of synchronicity. I love it. Mark, what about you?
I came from a background in massage therapy first before I entered into acupuncture. So I was studying massage therapy, and I got, much more interested in lymphatic drainage and craniosacral and vitreomanipulation and fascial work, and then decided to continue on with acupuncture. And I got exposed very early on in my studies to the traditional Japanese styles, and maybe one of the first conversations I had with the gentleman who became my main teacher, he was talking that the acupuncture is a manual form of medicine and that the needle is an extension of your hand. And it just all kind of flowed one thing into the next. I always kind of viewed them as one and the same. I never viewed it as body work and then acupuncture. I always viewed it that we're reading the body through touch, and whichever application that we're using to extend our treatment methodology, it's just the needle, the patient, the moxa, it all becomes an extension of your hand.
Yeah, it sounds like from the beginning, you've been using your hands, and much like Rick, found something and you just kept following, and the
The world, being generous as it is, will throw us opportunities on stuff that we're interested in. I've noticed that, at least I've noticed that tends to be the case often enough. Synchronicity is not to be taken lightly. What about you, Slate Burris?
Well, just listening to Rick and Mark, that's actually really beautiful. It seems like both were like destined to touch, and they love touching. And that which you love, your unconscious definitely backs you up on it, or some deeper part of you, which is beautiful. Mine isn't that beautiful because I never loved touching. I remember I did not like it, but I remember taking shiatsu in school, and it was kind of enjoyable, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm into massage or touching. So I was kind of impatient in acupuncture school. And I'd say 3/4 of the way through the first year, I was like, damn it, darn it. I'm just not seeing, even when I I would go constantly in to get treatments in the clinic. And even just watching their receiving treatments, I'm not really seeing anything that amazing. And I kind of got depressed. I think it was because I set my expectations so high. And at school, I just thought, well, you put a needle in, everything gets better, and how wonderful. I was kind of naive in a sense. And so one of the teachers at school, Cole Magubanawa, said, I was one of my treatments. I confessed to him, and I felt like I was confessing to a priest that I no longer believed or something in the church, because DCM can be quite almost like a religion. And I remember he said, we have to teach this crap here. Come to my clinic and I'll show you. Now, Cole was doing Tan, or a version thereof, but that's what kind of got me excited about acupuncture. Like, after I'd gone through this bit of depression into getting excited. And my school can't kick me out now retroactively because it did close down, unfortunately, Oregon College of Oriental Medicine. So after my first year, I went off with Tan stuff and I did the Camino of Santiago, this pilgrimage, 1,000-kilometer pilgrimage, and treated a bunch of people. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'll drop out of school. This is the answer. And thank goodness I treated someone, too long of a story, but I thought he didn't have pain in the leg. He didn't have pain in the arm, pain in the back, pain here, pain there. And I thought, oh gosh, I've been getting these great results because it's this sort of, these guys are walking 30 kilometers a day. They got a little pain on the knee, pain here. Yeah, it was great. But it made me continue my search for something else. And I'm so grateful. I get chill bumps. I already got chill bumps thinking about this. I'll never forget, I was so fortunate to be one of the top choice, second year acupuncture school, I think, pretty much, I would assume it's similar at other schools. On your second year, you can go in and observe in the clinic, but you're observing the supervisor deal with third-year students as they're giving treatments. And I'd always heard of this guy, Eric Stevens. He was like a classic at our school. He was one of the founders, and he was working at Tri-State with Kiko and Mark Seam. At this time, he'd fly back and forth, Portland, New York. And I'll never forget, oh God, it was beautiful. And I really do have chill bumps right now all over my back remembering this. It was like one of these defining moments of my life. I walk into this little room at OCOM's clinic, and I see Eric come in, and I was like, oh, this is the guy I keep hearing about, Eric Stevens. And he starts palpating the patient. He's palpating on the back. He's palpating on the front. And he was like, oh, man, liver, and very, very flamboyant. And, oh, liver, you're angry with spleen. And I was like, what the hell is this? This is crazy. And I think I said like, ak or eek or something. I made some noise. I was like, shh, be quiet. You're a fly on the wall. You're here. And it was like a bulb came on. And I was like, what is this? It's like a dance with someone. It's like he's going in and getting this information out, translating it into some other, it's a language. And he's going in and translating it into some language. And out comes this output of what the patient may need. And I would see him, he'd find some alarm on the back and he'd go up the leg and press like 3 points on like gallbladder channel until it released. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember, because I did make some noise and I forgot what noise it was. One of the students, third-year students, said, look, if you're interested in this, Eric works with Kiko and he does his own thing, but if you're interested in palpation, take a look at Kiko. So thus began days of skipped classes and skipping out on probably 20%, 30% of my classes to go sit in the library. There were like 9 Kiko seminars. And I started watching Kiko and I would palpate anyone that came near me. It didn't matter. And my second year of school, I turned into a palpation freak. Not so much for the love of touch, which I wish I had. Listen, that's a beautiful thing to love that contact. But when I started doing it, I thought, this is literally a way of getting some objective feedback from the body. And then you place the point and you objectively get feedback. Is it gone? Is it not gone? And then to see the symptoms go after finding some, I call them entities, but they're not, conscious entities, but some form you found on the abdomen or somewhere on the body, and watching it disappear and watching the symptoms go, I found my way. I found my way. So it was a really beautiful moment to watch. And I'm still thankful for Eric Stevens. If I hadn't seen him that day do that, and I thought he hated me at school, and I would skip classes and I didn't really care what most of my teachers were saying because I thought a lot of it, and this is bad, this is not a good thing, was useless. But when I saw Eric, I thought, this man knows. This man actually, he really knows. And I felt I'm in the presence of something great. And I bothered him like you can't imagine. With the same kind of ignoring I did in other classes, I would just, Eric, how did you do this? What is this? And I'll never forget in the clinic, he said, Slate, there's 5 other people here. I've got to work with a lot of people. Can you just be quiet? Like 2 minutes, 2 minutes. All right, Eric. I look at my watch. No, Eric, I was just like, I have to get this. And I was so happy years later. I said, Eric, I don't know if you remember me, probably hated me, but I took a picture in a class where I was doing my ode to Eric Stevens. And he goes, no, Slade, I didn't hate you. You were it was actually quite interesting, but you were persistent. Anyway, I say Eric, just watching him, he didn't need to convince anyone. It was watching him in action, this beautiful dance, was that on-ramp onto the joys of palpation. And it's a joy which I can't imagine many other joys other than the birth of a son or daughter, that can cause that kind of happiness.
Totally transformed your life.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We get so lucky sometimes. Something comes along and it doesn't just get our attention, it refuses to leave. It just drives you. When I was in acupuncture school, the school I went to was a little different. They had us like from day one in the clinic watching our teachers treat. So I got to watch this Japanese guy in my very first, week of acupuncture school in the first few months. And he was doing this very subtle palpation and meridian therapy and this and that. And I remember looking at him and thinking, I have got no idea what you're doing. And I don't even know if it's real. Like, I don't know if this is real or like some kind of fancy placebo hoodoo or something, because it was subtle. But he did get effects, and there was something intriguing about it that I couldn't quite let it go. I wanted to be like, yeah, no, whatever, but I just couldn't quite let it go. There's this other part of me that loves like the beauty and the theory that goes with acupuncture, the 5 phases and what they do. The whole 9 yards with the theory, it's beautiful, but I feel like I sit at a crossroads with this stuff. I always have. Throughout my whole practice. There's a part of me that loves thinking about how it works because I like tinkering with things. I used to like mechanic my own cars. I like being able to adjust a valve. To like adjust a valve, you got to be able to put a feeler gauge in and feel it at the same time. But it's like you have to know things. But there's this other part of me that's very fascinated, maybe even more. Like Slade, you were just saying, there's a dance, there's a language. There's another way of communicating. Rick, you said it as well. There's another way of communicating where you're not using your thinking. You're using your sensing. You're having a conversation at I'm going to call it a pre-verbal, sort of primordial level in a way. And there's something to it. But here's the issue that I've got, and maybe you guys can help me a bit. My thinking mind is constantly coming in and wanting to like steer the show, but I don't think it's really appropriate. There's a time for it, but there's also a time not for it.
Absolutely. There's something very beautiful and intellectually satisfying about the way we can practice our medicine. But a couple of things. One is verbally, well, let me put it this way. Patients forget. I'm not going to say they lie, but they forget.
Agreed.
And I can't tell you how many times when I look at a preliminary chart and under surgeries, it would say none. And I palpate the abdomen and there's a big scar where we used to do gallbladder surgeries with 10-inch scars, or you'd see the appendix, or you'd see at the pubis, you'd see a C-section that had happened. And again, they weren't telling, and what those implications of their scarring are to the flow of energy can be very profound. I think it's a learning, Michael, too. A little mantra I do is I touch to know. I don't think to know, I touch to know. And it's not to disregard our 4 pillars or anything like that. But if you develop, this is going to sound a little nutty, but I think we have intelligence in our hands, just like octopuses have brains in their tentacles. And I think we have this ability to take the information in, and it's a nonverbal, and then it can stir us to action. It was interesting to hear you, Slate, talk about, Kiko and her work, because I've known Kiko for 30 plus years now, and she was just here at our Pacific Symposium, and she just doesn't stop. I mean, she's Kiko. What can you say? She's Kiko. So those are important things, I think. The other thing, too, a couple other things. There's a tendency when we think about the four pillars, the palpation, that we think about palpating the pulse. Of course, I palpate the pulse, but the whole body is an energy field that gives us information if we attune ourselves to it. And so that's always a goal. And I've often used taking the pulse to quiet the patient down when they're talking and telling story. And I want to just get more to the root of things. I'll take the pulse, and it's like a zip it happens. It's amazing how it happens. But then when you go to the abdomen and follow the breath and feel for hot and cold and obstruction, an extremely powerful moment that emerges. The other thing, too, it came up with what Mark was saying, I think, too, because I started with acupuncture, then into body work, but I was very serious about both all along. The recent research about fascia and the bioelectrical events that are happening in mitochondria, and now the work on interstitium that's emerging, it just broadens the intellectual foundation and the validity of what we're doing and what we can feel and how we communicate with the body and the mind.
Rick, I was just thinking as you were talking about like being able to sense and think and communicate with our hands. I had that image of the homunculus in the brain where like how much brain tissue is devoted to like hands, tongue, genitals. Gigantic amount of brain tissue. So our hands occupy a portion of our sensorium. I haven't thought about that, so just know.
It's interesting when you're saying that, and everything you guys are all saying is obviously it's resonating with all of us because we're very much into this. But there's an article, it's on how sensitive is human touch. I think it was released somewhere at the University of California, but Philip Ross is the main author. But it is listed when you go through it. It says the human finger can discriminate ridges as small as 13 nanometers in amplitude. It almost kind of resonates as like the 3 being, 6 being, 9 being, 12 being. It's hard to kind of personify that into your hands. So it describes that if your finger was the size of Earth, you'd be able to differentiate individual cars and houses. And so that's how subtle that we can get to. And Jeffrey Don, to use the analogy of the Hawaiian navigators, and they have their paddles in the water, and they're just sensing at the surface of the water, but they can feel and sense the deep swells that are pulling, and they literally can traverse the oceans and direct themselves just by feeling the changes at that surface. And by feeling these measures of whether it's waves, and that's another apt description as Jeffrey is keen on doing, right? Because what energy is all through waves, right? So whether we're feeling these subtle, silent waves of the ebb and flow of the lymphatic system, or these more pulsatile waves of chi and blood moving through the arterial system, or the more kind of frenetic, high-frequency waves going through the nervous system, all of this chi, blood, and fluids, right, is all flowing through the channel system. And we can ascertain that just by this light touch. And so we are doing this dance, as Slate said, and we're kind of listening and following. And if you ever watch this professional partner dances as they're going through, it's this graceful, fluid movement, and they're listening and working off of each other. And that's hopefully how our treatments look, right? That we're able to just listen and follow. And it's also how we're going to discern what we want to do. And really the main question for all acupuncturists is, how do we know we've done what we wanted to do? And I believe Rick said that, it's a way to confirm and to know that we did what we wanted to do.
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about palpation, so I got into Kiko second year, but I think by the time I was out of school, I was doing something else. But that got me the love of the beautiful thing about palpation. What Mark was just saying is this confirmation, and Rick had mentioned. I think anyone that talks about palpation will mention it. And I feel kind of like an urco. Is it called an urco, the beast that's not very sensitive? Because the beauty I found in the palpation was this objective way of getting data on the body. So if we say a meridian that's closed is, let's say, pain along the meridian or something, I just became obsessed with saying, all right, so when I press this point, what meridian's open? All right, write that data down. Let's do it again on 5 other people. Let's do it on 20. Now, does another meridian open? And so I would start creating these charts, over hundreds of hours. And then, when a meridian opened, does an alarm on the same side open? But it was a way to actually, just like any science, and this is where some people may differ on here, I think you need to have some kind of objective data in the sense of like a language so you can start creating the language or interpret the language, like what the body is saying. So I'm not so much, that's why I say maybe like a basic primitive creature, I'm not relying so much on my intuition. It's kind of more like, all right, I know this point will open this and this meridian, I know this and this. You draw new conclusions from that. It starts building this language that you can use to listen to the body. And to draw that back in with, you said, sometimes my mind gets involved and my thoughts come in. My mind, I start thinking about dinner during a treatment, but I just ignore my mind because it's kind of like I can be thinking while you're having a conversation. I think it's proven most of us do that. But my mind rattles off, but all I'm doing, I'm listening to the body and saying, all right, this is exactly what the body wants. And you're getting that language together. So the language I use is always, is it this meridian? Is it this obstacle? Is it this element? Gone through and kind of categorized everything in a sense, which sounds kind of heady, but it's not, it's more handy. And it's basically, all right, I can think about dinner, but what I really want to do is find out what the body is trying to tell me it needs and use an algorithm from that to give it what it needs. And the beauty here is, 100% you've gotten what you set out to do. Because let's say in a treatment, if I say, according to the algorithm, if I do this, all meridians should open. That means no pain on any muscle in the body, no alarms, what I call elements and obstacles, so no pain on the abdomen anywhere else. You can objectively look at that and you can say, all right, are all meridians open? Are all the extremities pain-free? Is the entire abdomen pain-free? Are the symptoms gone, as a final step? So for me, the part of the beauty really is being able to see, I really did set out, or I didn't get what I set out to do. Because one important thing is when you screw up, you need to know it, and if I'm into some kind of, maybe I'm feeling like, I don't know, I need to damp spleen or something. Hell, I don't know if I got rid of damp spleen instantly, but with palpation, I can know 100%, yes, what I call meridians opening, as in all muscles are now loose, all pain from the torso, objectively, you can know that for a fact. And then the last fact is, all right, are your symptoms gone? For me, that's the beauty. Actually, it gives a certain surety in the treatments. And it's not like the surety that you look for to know the patient is actually getting a good treatment. Instead of saying, well, I'm treating the root cause of your problem and it could take 10 treatments to address the root, so buy a package of 10 treatments. So in one treatment, you can know, I actually think I was successful in setting out.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, a practice management software and EMR that's here to make clinical life a little easier. Running a health and wellness practice means managing a lot of moving parts. That's why I love how Jane helps to bring a bit of calm to the busy day by allowing me to set a schedule that works for my business. I can customize treatment types and times, locations, and staff availability to keep everybody organized and my clinic running smoothly. Need to send intake forms or appointment reminders? Jane can automate those too, helping patients to show up prepared and on time. And when it's time to pay, it's all taken care of. No extra card swipes or billing cleanup later. I especially like that with the welcome email my patients receive, they can fill out the intake, consent, and disclosure forms. It's easy for the patient, and it all goes right into their digital file. If you're looking for software that cares as much about the business side of your clinic as you care about your patients, head to jane.app/demo to learn more. And if you're ready to dive in, use the code Qiological for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account.
I think one of the really powerful things about palpation, that we can get some feedback in real time. I love the theory to a certain degree, but I also strongly dislike the theory because it's like I've got an idea in my mind and I go to treat it, but how do I know that I've made a difference until they come back in a week? But that's not great medicine in my opinion, because if you missed, they just may not come back and see you. And the other thing that I found about palpation, I didn't even realize this until we're having this conversation right now, the four of us, but I realize that when I am paying attention in a palpatory way instead of a theoretical way, it changes me. It slows me down. It calms me down. It definitely slows me down. That's probably the biggest thing. It makes me more attentive. And instead of being in my spinny mind going, oh yeah, spleen dampness, oh do this, do that, according to the theory, blah, 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 which isn't that satisfying. If I drop in, sometimes the body will just tell you things in a very synchronistic way. But I think mostly, this is funny, I'll have to investigate this more when I get back into clinic. But again, it changes me. I'm looking to help people with palpation because I want to know in the moment. But that kind of attending makes me a different person.
A couple of things. What you're just describing is one of the very beautiful things about traditional Thai massage is that we're instructed to provide a meditative experience and experience a meditative experience. The work itself is a technique of meditative awareness and consciousness. Something else you said stirred an old memory. People might know what Traeger bodywork is. He was a contemporary of Feldenkrais, Milton Traeger. He was an MD. I remember attending a class he taught here in the early 80s in San Diego, and he had this concept of hookup, very different than hooking up now, where the doer and the receiver sort of become one entity. And when you achieve that, then the communication is at a much, much deeper, both spiritual and objective level. One final thought, and then I'll turn the mic over, which is I like palpation as a bridge between the energetic and the physical. So when I'm palpating and I'm feeling subtle energies, I also percuss the liver. I check the ileocecal valve. Besides palpating points to find tenderness, I'm feeling the organs. I make sure the spleen's not swollen. I come into the sigmoid colon area to see how much stagnation's there. I don't think I've ever felt a neck that there isn't some anomaly in the cervical vertebrae. And the more we learn about the vagus nerve and the implications between the brain and the gut through the vagus nerve, that all that obstruction you can feel in most necks has impact. And then we can certainly palpate all along the spine for subluxations. We're not chiropractors, but that's where they focus their attention. Hot and cold. We're both feeling subtle, energetic. We're also going to feel more objective material. And I think that we're the bridge of understanding, and we can affect those. And the other thing, too, is sometimes just that sort of diagnostic palpation or touching to know, what we see from the Kiko idea, it's also part of the treatment. We're not differentiating learning and doing it at the same time.
Yeah, and the assessment becomes the treatment becomes the assessment. But Michael, I think when you're palpating, you say sometimes you get into your head and you love the theory, but sometimes you want to get into your hands. But what's nice is that your hands can validate the theory, and we can go from the substantial, as Rick was saying, to all this modern understanding of fascia and of interstitium, and now even keratinocytes and through the skin surface, and how the brain and the skin are both derived from the ectoderm. So there's all these different embryological connections. But then once we lay our hands on our patients, we can validate this, and we can see, how did they know? How did they know that the pericardium and the liver both form out of the diaphragm embryologically, and they're going to form the Zhui Yin? And then you have the liver and the small intestine are midday, midnight connections, right? But then there's connections from the liver that are coming down from the duodenum and the ligament of Treitz. And all these things that we could palpate. We could palpate over stomach 23 on the right side and see, are they having palpitations, because there's this dynamic between the liver and the heart and the small intestine. So we can gather all that information, keeping the dance metaphor. We have to learn the steps of the dance first before we can do the dance. And so getting all of that theory and that channel anatomy and visceral anatomy and fascial anatomy and having all of that in our minds, then we can kind of forget it and lay our hands on our patients and see how that's expressing on that patient on the table.
Beautiful.
Yeah, as I listen to you guys, I hear you describe it as a dance. I get that. But I'm also hearing it described as a language. And I know for myself, having learned another language, there's this process. In the beginning, it's painful because there's all these sounds and you have no idea what they really mean. It's a little overwhelming. But after a while, they start to take form and you can hear things and then you can get meaning out of it. But it's vital to build up a basic vocabulary before you can get to that point. And I think what I've been hearing from each of you is that there's different kinds of vocabulary, syntax, and grammar, and then communication that comes out of that each of you have explored in the work that you've done.
Yeah, and once the vocabulary is set up, I think in the system I practice, there's definitely a vocabulary. Then there's definitely certain things you're looking for. I mean, you're looking at everything, but there's certain patterns you'll see show up. And there's millions of them, but different combinations. But that's the beautiful thing. Once the vocabulary is set up, then you can just sit back and go mindless. For example, when I'm doing a diagnosis, yeah, maybe I'll think of dinner, but my body just goes almost like, it feels like it's just going off on its own, just like in a conversation right now. We're talking, but I'm not thinking my mouth is now going down and now it's moving up and my chin is moving. We're just almost on autopilot, as we speak and as we listen. Listening is it's an active thing because you have to pay attention. But I look at palpation as like that. I literally, once the vocabulary has been established in a sense, and you got to always be willing to learn new words if one appears, no? But once it's established, that's what really the beauty for me in palpation, where it's therapeutic. And maybe like Rick was talking about, you get to go into this beautiful state. It's just this beautiful state of listening. Like my hands are moving and I'm palpating, but you're almost in this open state. And that's where my happy place is, because I guess I hadn't thought about this. It's my meditative moment. I meditate at night, 2 in the morning when I wake up, I can't sleep, but it's kind of my awake meditative moment where I'm functioning in the world and you're just in this open state of just talk to me. And I often, when a patient comes in, they're like, blah, blah, blah. Rick, you've mentioned this patients. And, I've got this and I've got this problem. This sounds bad, and maybe I shouldn't even say this, but for me, I don't want to talk to the persona. The persona is the problem. That thing that's like, I got this problem, and I do it. I complain, I'm the problem too. But that persona is the problem. I don't want to deal with it. And I feel like with palpation, you can go into this primitive, and I call it this primitive thing, whatever it is. It's not going to lie. It's just sitting there. And all I want to do is talk to that. That's the problem. And the beautiful thing is, I'll give you an extreme case. A woman came in and she wouldn't stop. And so Rick, because that's brilliant, doing the pulse. I actually just told her, please stop talking. I can't concentrate. And the daughter said, nobody tells my mama that, whatever. And I'll never forget, because in my mind was, this persona is getting in my way. I just want to rip the floor off of it. I just want to open it up and let it not collapse. That would be nice if it could collapse the persona. And after the treatment, she woke up and she came up, it's just in this beautiful state. I don't know how long it lasted, but you can see the persona. It's almost like I see palpation as a way of getting beyond that persona, which we're constantly grooming and make the presentation in the world, and get to talk to something more primitive. And it's exciting. And it's so beautiful. And it's effective. Once you get the algorithms or how to listen and how to respond.
A component of this I'd like to share too, because we've been sort of in our world with this, but from the outside world, one of the biggest complaints of the way Western medicine, allopathic medicine is practiced, is someone sitting behind a desk, typing into a computer, maybe getting a cold stethoscope against your chest, but to hear your heart, but there's no connection made. And the simple act of touching is such a rapport builder that it's absolutely undeniable. And that kind of rapport, the ceremony of a treatment, the connection that it forms, the quietness that can ensue, are critical parts of benefit of the healing session. And I think as we sort of move into more integrative medicine now, I would hope we don't lose as a profession our touch, our connection that we make with our patients. I think it's absolutely vital, and it's appropriate to what we do. We can become very skilled in it. And whether you're reading the body this way or you're just one human to another human through touch, like a mother to their child or a father to their child, is invaluable. And I hope that all of our people in our profession maintain that, whether it's certainly the pulse is very, very important, but there's information available all over the body for us.
And the first character of Japanese massage.
Mark, you're actually doing that in your work. Mark, you're actually doing that, aren't you? In a more integrative setting, you're doing this, bringing this very palpatory-based medicine into a hospital.
Yes, I work in the Children's Hospital and Children's Cancer Center and Adult Cancer Center. And yeah, I just get to go in and palpate and read the body through touch and do our treatments that we all do, which is great. And it really continuously is exciting, and it gets to validate everything that we've learned from an East Asian medicine perspective and how it can be related and integrated, but not without losing its essence and its core. Rick, it was beautiful you were describing that as this touching with love. The first character in Japanese massage an is the character is literally broken down with three radicals, but it means or is translated as to touch with a mother's love. And we know that touching that stimulates that oxytocin production that's released from the skin that's going to create that bonding and caring and feeling of being taken care of. And then it also has effects being drawn into the bloodstream once the oxytocin is released, and that influences the lymphatic system and builds T cells and white blood cell counts. But yeah, utilizing this touch in an integrated setting, it's really opening the eyes a lot on the Western side. So you can see, working in the post-procedure rooms when people come out from LPs, and I'm doing work to kind of decrease post-LP headaches and other things right as they're recovering. And it's all with our gentle needling and tation, and then some manual therapy of lymph work and some neural work. And it's making a huge difference among many other areas too. But it's definitely a wonderful thing. And hopefully it's going to expand and provide a lot more other opportunities, because I think a lot of the work, and again, maybe I'm naive in thinking, but a lot of the work in hospitals, even from our perspective from East Asian medicine, could use a lot more touch and palpation-based approaches into that to create that full integration, because they already do a lot of talking and a lot of analyzing on the Western side.
I love the poetry of descriptions, Mark, where you pull in the physiological with the poetic. It's just your command of both of all these languages is really profound, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Rick mentioning the touch, how important it is. Like in Mexico, I often forget because we're always hugging and kissing. Even patients come in, we hug and kiss. And it's just, that's the culture here. But I remember I was at a hotel once, and I was the manager. I worked as a tour guide. So the manager offered me a free shiatsu massage. And I'm always like pumping people for stories, like Uber drivers, whoever. And I'm always asking, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened? And I said, have you ever had anything strange happen in a massage? And he says, of course. I said, what's the strangest? And he said, well, there was an American gentleman that came in, and as I touched his abdomen, he started groaning, and I thought it was almost sexual or something. And I was a little put off, but I continued. And the man said, I haven't been touched. I've forgotten how many years, but I haven't been touched in like 5 years. No one's touched me. And I think sometimes we forget about it. I love touching, hugging. But if someone hasn't been touched, yeah, the touch itself, just that interconnection with another human, to be part of society again, to be part of humanity again, being touched is important. I think just from an overall general well-being, psychological kind of sense. And then there's more refined touch where you're getting information for the treatments. But yeah, touch is key.
Something you said, Michael, I think it's important for our listeners, especially new students, let's say. It's like learning a language, and it's going to be daunting to start out if you just feel hot and cold, which is pretty easy. But it's a learning process. It's not just like you're not going to learn Chinese in a day or a month or a year or 5 years. It's just stay with it. And the more quiet you get, and then your intuition, because consciousness is all around us, information's coming in all the time. If we shut up enough to hear it or sense it, but to really, a journey of 10,000 li begins with the first step. And that's true for touch therapy too. Even though it's the most primitive part of our being in many ways, it also can be a very deep learning experience. And it's certainly worth the journey because you learn along the way.
Yeah, you do learn along the way. That is absolutely for sure. The building of the palpatory vocabulary, I appreciate, Rick, that you start with, well, you can always just check for hot and cold. You can always check for loose and tight. I was in a conversation recently with some other folks, and one of the acupuncturists was talking about how confused she is with a particular series of diagnostic skills. And the person leading the conversation was saying, well, look, when you get confused and that happens, it happens to all of us, the thing to do is not make it more complicated. Like, simplify. You don't need to get everything. You don't have to feel everything. You don't have to cure everything. Just go to a few basic things that you know for sure. Is it hot? Is it cold? For me, I always go to, is it excess or deficient? Is it loose? Is it tight? If ever I get lost, and I get lost plenty of times, especially when I think in my mind, well, according to the theory, that's when I know I've totally lost the trail, completely lost the trail. It's gone. I go back to, is it excess or deficient? Which is a very profound question, Because a lot of excess, things that look excess when you first look at them or hear them, are based out of deficiency. Slate, I'm thinking what you were saying about how people come in with their persona. We all have a polished persona that we take with us everywhere. It's just part of being human. But sometimes the persona is the problem. And what's beneath that? Sometimes the persona, it looks like excess, but there's like weaknesses underneath there. There's deficiencies. And you work on those deficiencies and, you can see things change. But again, coming back to what's simple, to build your vocabulary makes a lot of sense to me. Slate, it sounds like you, when you first got fired up with this, truly fired up, it sounds like you just started putting your hands on all kinds of people and, almost like dropping yourself into another culture and picking up the language by just being around and hanging out.
We keep using this word, it's a language, and it has a culture, I guess, too. But yeah, my second year of school, again, they can't kick me out retroactively. I go down to Mexico and treat 40, 50 people a day. Every 2 months, I would go down for 2 weeks. And it was just constantly touching, constantly, oh my gosh, I've seen this pattern before. Let me give it a name. I'm not so much, I'm going to intuit, and I respect people that are. Why is kind of like, I've seen this pattern. Look at this thing. I'll call this heaven quake. Look at this thing. I've seen it like 10 times. I'll call it the iron beard. I put kind of medieval names on things. And let me just see, is there a way to get rid of this? Now, does it work every single time? And it's just like, this is the word car. This is the word tree. This is the word dog, the word run. You build up this vocabulary so that you just go across the body until finally you're saying, it's a predominance of earth due to a deficiency in yin with an earthquake and a left yin chao mai. But you can literally formulate in exact wording what the body has just shown you, and it just comes up. It takes about 1 minute, just because in the style that I'm doing. So others are probably, it's much more you going into depth, into different details and different nuances. I'm basically just looking, all right, within the vocabulary, again, I had a limited vocabulary at first, because I would find, look, this meridian is closed, meaning there's pain along the meridian. So how do we open it? That's my vocabulary. Then I would go start touching front mu points or something. All right, how do I deactivate that? All right. Now there's a vocabulary. I just took Chinese vocabulary because the Chinese had already done a lot of this. But then with certain new objects, so you see an object, you give it a name, and that's adding new vocabulary. So when I'd see something maybe I hadn't seen with Kiko, like this little triangle up top, I call the heaven quake. So I give it a name. There's the vocabulary. And there's a feeling sometimes, and now this is probably just in the head, that the body's like, oh my God, finally someone's listening. Finally, and I've seen people like, someone, you've just listened to me for the first time. It's so nice to be listened to when all you're doing is just, you're shutting up and looking at them. But I often get the feeling a body's like, dude, I've been screaming for 10 years and you've just heard my plea. It's almost like this primitive thing. I often get the feeling it's almost, I don't know if it's conscious, but I'm literally talking to some entity, which is not the persona. 100% is not the persona. But after thousands of hours, there is this feeling, what is this thing that I'm talking to? Yeah, we communicate. Yeah, there's a response. My response is with a needle. But what the heck is it, ultimately? But ultimately, it's just have the conversation, I guess, because knowing exactly what it is it the unconscious? Is it the primitive self? Is it the soul? What is it? But that beautiful feeling of whatever that thing is, there is this feeling of, oh my God, someone's finally listening to me. And it's a really beautiful feeling. It's a feeling in the heart. I don't know how to describe it. It's not a feeling of like the voice comes into my head, thank you for listening. There's this almost like wanting to be tearful sometimes of like, there's been this exchange and it's expressed itself, and then it's gotten what it wanted, which is even better if you hit the right point.
It's kind of a sacred exchange.
It's a cool exchange. I don't know if it's sacred. I guess it is, because anything empathetic and anything which is a dynamic between a joining of two things, I guess is spiritual.
Slate, beauty is, I think, a really great way to describe it. That there's something beyond the persona, beyond the Wei Qi, beyond the, whatever names we want to put on it. There's something behind that nose. Again, is it soul? Is it something primitive? I often take the Chinese idea of zheng, the zheng qi, the upright qi. And when I'm working in ways similar that kind of rhyme with what you're talking about, and I feel like I'm not talking to the person, I'm talking to their zheng. I'm talking to the part of them that knows how to take care of them. I'm talking to the part of them of everything that's working well, be it their blood or their neurology or their hormonal system, whatever it is. All those things that are working, air quotes here, correctly, that's the zheng qi. And I'm hesitant to put too much of a name and definition on it because I think a lot of it kind of goes beyond the human mind. So I just leave it at the zheng, the upright. But Slate, when I hear you say that there's times where you're working with your patient and that part sort of expresses, thank you, I've been seen. I've had that experience too. I think there's something that happens sometimes in the work that we do where people at a very deep level have been recognized. And there's something to that. And I can't go more into it than that because I just don't know. And I'd just be making up stories anyway because it's a little bit mysterious.
I had another flashback memory. Probably 40 years ago when I was doing early research, I came across a book called The Brilliant Function of Pain.
Oh, what a great title.
And it reminded me, I think what Slate said is that pain is our way of our unconscious to try to get our conscious mind aware that something's wrong. And that made a light bulb go off in my head. So it's you don't want to not take your patients out of pain, but you want to find out what the cause or the source of the pain is, the seed of the pain, the root of the pain is, and not just get rid of it. And not see pain as the enemy. The pain is the signal light going on. It's like the red light on our dashboard that we need to change the oil, or we're low on oil, that it's, okay, something's wrong, let's deal with it. And, what we've come to in allopathic medicine a lot is the opioids and yada, yada, yada. And I think we offer a great alternative to that, especially when you work the meridians and you see the pain dissipate because you've opened a channel or made a connection in the body the person might not have any clue about, but you really provided a marvelous service, the healing service.
The teishin is a gentle and effective tool for treating patients without inserting acupuncture needles. Using a teishin causes no pain or discomfort, allowing practitioners to treat even the most sensitive of people. Using the teishin invites practitioners to evolve senses and dormant capacities. Humans are capable of great subtlety, far greater than we often believe. Working with the teishin compels us to confront many of our assumptions about what makes acupuncture effective. This exciting journey of self-discovery helps practitioners to refocus how they practice acupuncture. If you'd like to dig in deeper, check out episode 303 where I talk about all things teishin with Dr. Bob Quinn. Blue Poppy carries a series of handcrafted teishins created by a silversmith cooperative in San Pancho, Mexico. They also offer many videos on their YouTube channel, which provides basic instruction on how to use a teishin and other non-insertive tools that they carry. Dr. Bob Quinn's best-selling book on how to effectively use the teishin is also available. Visit www.bluepoppy.com for teishins and other fine Japanese acupuncture tools.
What you just said, Rick, that's really key. It's not get rid of the pain, it's find the problem. And at the same time, it's how do we know we've gotten to the problem? You're getting rid of the pain. If you treat the real problem, that pain should go away. The alarm should turn off when the fire's gone. But the beauty of palpation is, we could say, well, how do I know if I'm just getting rid of the pain or I'm addressing the deeper issue? And I think via palpation, one thing I often use when I'm giving a conference, I'll treat someone with a recipe for back pain, and say, all right, the back pain's gone. And I've already palpated them before, and they're jumping off the table every time I touch their abdomen, grab their legs. They're very sensitive. There's a way to erase, so I'll make the pain come back, and then say, all right, now let's do this via palpation. So we go through, palpate, boom, find the point. How's your back? Okay, the back's better. But now we have a way of knowing, is the pain being addressed from a deeper level? Because now you can go to the body, and the entire body now is like, in this state of just, you can grab all the muscles you want, no reaction. Press on the belly where you want, no reaction. So we can kind of go beyond this thing of, we often will use a recipe to treat something and saying, yes, this is holistic and I'm going to a deeper level because I've used this recipe for your neck and it's acupuncture, so it's holistic. With palpation, we actually have an objective way of saying, is it really holistic? Are we really opening up all this other stuff, not just getting rid of the back pain? And again, that's what keeps me up at night. It used to keep me up often, not now as much. For many years it did. It kept me, just like, oh my God, is this the craziest thing in the world? Literally, as a palpator, it's often like Alice in Wonderland. There's this whole world to be explored. And you don't stop gaining new vocabulary. You don't stop learning, even once, just like a language. Once I'm learning Russian, but I couldn't write a poem in Russian. But there comes a time where you get enough language skills that you can make it even more maybe poetic, or you start understanding the poetry of what the other being or whatever is saying to you. And there's this richness, and it's, I can't put that across here in the short time, but there's this beautiful richness of, on a practical level, like I just said, are we really treating a deeper level? Well, there's an objective way to see if things are really opening up in a more full way, not just the symptom, but also, again, the experience itself of that communion. In a sense, it's a communion with the other person and listening.
It becomes a profound sense that Michael was referencing, right? That it's hard to put words on it because there's the communication without words that's happening throughout the entire treatment. And the patient does fall into this deep, relaxed state where we're addressing not only their primary complaint, but also underlying imbalances. And we can track that through this palpation. And so really the palpation allows us to fully individualize the treatment for that person on that day. Because instead of coming up, like you were saying, Slate, with these point protocols and going through here, we are assessing them on that day, and we're learning. And okay, now as we start to manipulate that needle or that patient, how is their body responding to that? And then when we go to the next channel and we're palpating what's happening, maybe I was going to use liver 3, but you know what? That's actually not the most efficient area along the channel. I'm going to come in and I'm going to go work on liver 5 or liver 8, and I'm going to see, and now I'll know not only what points to use, but how long am I going to stay there? What type of manipulation am I going to do with those points? Right? It's really palpation that's going to guide us and direct us into really optimizing that treatment for that person instead of just doing a point protocol. And that's really what makes not only the experience profound, but it takes the treatment to a higher level as well. And your patient, they feel it. They may not be able to put words into it, but they just feel it's different. I'm sure we've all had the experience where our patients have said, I've been to other acupuncturists that maybe don't do whatever style of palpation and reading the body, and it's a different sense. They feel the difference.
I think I just heard you use the word communion. That fits. Mark, there was something else I wanted to come back to that you talked about earlier in this conversation. And this sort of touches on that language and building that language. You were talking about the Polynesian sailors who could take a boat across vast bodies of water. And, they had the stars and all that, but they could feel the tides. And they could feel like the waves on an island mountain that is like way beyond the horizon. That there's a kind of sensitivity that they had living in the environment that they lived in, and that in this particular case, it was a very fluidic intelligence. I'd like to hear if you've got some more ideas about developing that fluidic intelligence aspect that goes into the palpatory work that we do.
Well, that's a big question. I don't think it's any different than anything else that we do when we're working on cultivating and refining a practice. It really just comes with doing, and maybe starting, like you were saying earlier, starting with the basics and starting with the fundamental aspects. So we're sinking into the body and we're feeling for the differences. We are a fluid medium, right? Our body is a fluid medium. Everything's working through water. And so that's our first step, right? We settle in and we're into that extracellular space, if we want to call it that, or we're into the Tao-Li, or we're into the superficial lymphatics, whatever terminology we want to use, and we can feel that buoyancy. And how is it? Is it boggy? Is there fluid accumulated there? Or does it feel really tense and dry and they haven't gotten a lot of things there? Then we can settle in. We know we all palpate arteries, at least at the radial artery, right? But then you can settle in on many different points, easy to start at the source points or other aspects, and you settle in, go through that fluid level. Then we sink into the blood level. And can you feel that artery? Is there tension in and around that artery? And then you can, if we wanted to get really refined, and we can roll off and see if we can palpate perifascial tension around the nerves and other things that are all in the track of those fascial planes or the channels that we're working with. But I think the learning comes from knowing what's there. The feeling comes just from doing and seeing, okay, what is it? And is it tight or is it lax? Is it cold or is it hot? Does it feel boggy? Is there fluid accumulated or does it feel dry? And then how does that change when we're giving an impetus to the body, whether that's a needle or it's moxa or it's artation? So I think that's the first place that we start, is where we start with everything, is just attending. And then the more that you can refine that touch, we can get to maybe feeling those 13 nanometer level or whatever that is. But it progresses. And it progresses just like anything else. Maybe you guys have other thoughts on where to start with that.
You shook another neuron loose in my brain here, guys, because I've been around the spectrum of people that touch in different ways in healing, from John Upledger, watching him teach craniosacral work, feeling that very subtle movement of the cerebral spinal fluid, and organ manipulation, and then shiatsu and tai and all that. But then I just remembered something from years ago. There was a woman who had studied in the jungles of the Philippines and learned to do psychic surgery. And to the extent that I received treatment from her, and then the host asked if I had a treatment table that I could bring for her to use to go to another location. And I did. And I know that there was no chicken gizzards underneath my table or anything like that, that she was pulling things out and showing people this is what I took out of her body. And I observed her all day. And she would bring her hands above the body. And in just a split second or so, she was inside the body. Her hands disappeared up to her wrist. And she would work around, and then she would bring material out of the body that was usually foul-smelling and discolored. It was truly, truly blood stagnation. And I know when she worked for me previously, when she went into my neck, which had been chronically injured, when it came out, my first reaction was olfactory. I could just smell something foul that had been removed from my body. She was an American. She spoke English, of course. And I said, what is it you do? And she said, your physical body's more empty space than solid space. And what I do is, through my skills, I resonate at the vibrational level, at the skin, and then I go into the empty space. So she's working from a very subtle energy awareness and then taking something physical out. So I'm bringing these stories up, not because I pre-planned it or anything, but just there's this spectrum of palpation. I think that we have to be open to the possibility and to encourage the learners and our colleagues and the new people coming into our field that it's a wide open arena, and find your niche where you feel most comfortable, where you feel your own heart-mind coherence happen, and where you see efficacy in your treatments and connectivity with your patients, and where you feel it's nurturing your own capacity to heal yourself and others. And I guess part of that too, and from my own experience, is be open to exploration. Slate's in the jungles of Mexico. And Mark, I'm not sure what all you've done, but it's something you've been charmed, or you're charming and been charmed to go to a very deep level of understanding. And our great leader, Michael Max, you synergize minds, you touch minds and you touch hearts with words. And so it's a huge, wonderful place to be in, this planet Earth, in our profession. Our license, what a great venue our license provides us to heal, to serve.
Rick, a lot of people are complaining right now about what an awful world it is and how terrible everything is. I'm not denying that there's troubles. Look, there's always troubles. But one of the wonderful things that we get to do with the work that we do, in whichever way that we do it, is we get to make a difference in somebody's life in ways that, I'm going to use the word holistic, maybe in the sense that Slate is, not that we have these protocols and because we're not using pharmaceuticals, we're holistic, but holistic because we're bringing all of ourself to it. We're bringing our mind, we're bringing our heart, we're bringing our attention and being with people in a way. And it changes them. And I think it makes the world a little bit better. Look, you want to make the world a better place, start with your treatment table.
I'll tell you the cool thing, Michael, is, you don't have to be a saint to do this. Like, I'm sacrificing my life for others. Bullshit. This is like so fun. For me, it's like every patient's like a video game. It's like a real live video game, and I'm just going in, bloop, 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 bloop. You do your treatment. This is fun. So there's no sense of sacrifice. It's almost like this win-win situation. It's fun to palpate, it's fun, and it's the patient's benefiting. There's zero sense of, oh yes, now I'm dedicating my life for the good of others. No, there's no sacrifice here. It's just fun. And I think if it's not fun, find something that is fun. Because to really love something and to get into it, I'm pretty sure of this. I think it's the secret to any type of genius in the world, because you're alone. When you're not having fun doing something, you're all by yourself. Your poor little persona is all by itself doing something, doing mechanically, going through the thing. But when you're in love, or when your passion or your demons behind, I don't know what to call it. It's like you've got a spirit just sitting right beside of you, guiding you and helping you, and it fills you with joy. So there's no sacrifice involved. And I always say, I've taken the road of healer and I help others. No, it's like playing a video game. You're having fun, you're enjoying it, and at the same time, and people are benefiting. To me, I can't think of anything more beautiful to be doing. And someone else can think of something more beautiful for them. Each person has their thing, but just personally, God, I'm sorry to go back to Eric Stevens. I have this sense of gratitude to him again for at least getting me on the on-ramp to this, because it's a joyful route. It can be frustrating. It can be a long route. It's just like learning any language can. But the joy derived, when you're finally making your way, the path is the joy in a sense. But the joy derived putting it to use, let's say, and seeing the results is just... I feel like I'm wasting my time if I watch TV. Literally, I'm wasting my time. I could be having fun and helping somebody at the same time rather than watching a freaking, Netflix or something.
A recent phenomenon I've been experiencing is students and new practitioners that were helped when they were infants by acupuncture, and that's why they're into it now. More than a few. There's associates in the clinic, and someone I remember seeing as a baby brought in by her mother, which comes back to this idea of palpation, which if you want to work in pediatrics, you either get information from the mother or father, or you're palpating the body of the baby. And because I had the extreme pleasure, joy, blessing of working alongside Alex Taberry, may he rest in peace, who was a pediatrician in our medicine, and saw him work with children, the magic he did and what he accomplished with children. And those are some of the children that are now working alongside me, because this is 25, 30 years ago, that palpation skills are essential. And the tools that you use are really palpatory, the cutaneous tools that you use a lot too. So if you have in your heart and if your video game involves pediatrics, nourish your palpatory skills. And it just comes from and the babies respond without thinking. It's just stimulus response.
And it kind of takes the whole idea of what we're doing is only placebo, because they have no idea what you're doing and they still respond. I have the good fortune of being in an integrated facility a few days a week, and you can literally see on the monitors blood pressure coming down, heart rate settling down, oxygen levels coming up. And so it's impossible for that to be placebo, and primarily with touch. And so coming about it from that state in all of these practices, whether it's pediatrics or not, this vastness that we've all been talking about, and coming about it from this sense of gratitude that we can do because we do enjoy it so much, and we get just as much out of helping our patients than they get. And so it's constantly stimulating, it's constantly engaging and exciting to kind of keep you going and learning more. But it also gives you that humbleness, because you realize there's so much more to learn. And that's what hopefully keeps us all cultivating our minds and our bodies and our hands and hearts.
Amen.
Amen. Well, gentlemen, this has really been fun. And I appreciate all of you taking the time, share your experience, the depth of your joy in the work that you do. It's a real gift. Any last things that you'd like to say before we wind it down for this time?
Just one more thought that came to mind. I've been listening to a podcast called The Telepathy Tapes recently.
Everybody's been listening to that lately. It's very weird. It's like everywhere.
A lot of it started because of working with autistic children and seeing how many of them, maybe she estimates 1 out of 5, the woman Kai who runs it. These are nonverbal people. They probably, I don't know if they're touch adverse or not, but they read minds, they communicate telepathically with other autistic people around the world. The need for our work, the need for our skills, our knowledge, our capacities, our tech is only growing. We see challenges to our profession because of compensation and schools closing, but I think our profession is strong and alive, and I think we bring so much to it and to the world. And I think our palpatory skills besides all the great theory we have and the poetry of it all, but our palpatory skills and our openness to palpitation and touch and connectivity is really one of the jewels of our profession. And to not want to become like a little MD, be yourself. And if you're drawn to this style or this approach, the openness to touch and that kind of coherence we can establish with our patients, with our friends, our communities and families, to really cherish that and nourish it and feel grounded in it. No apologies. Go for it.
I would also say, going back and looking at like a little me back at school, if I were talking to little Slate initiative, if someone is in acupuncture school, you're doing acupuncture, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know. I thought it was going to be so much more. Maybe I thought results were better, but I don't feel the heart of it or whatever. I'd say give palpation a try. And this is talking to little me, but I'm also talking to little other people. If I hadn't found palpation, I seriously doubt I would be doing acupuncture right now. I'm 99% sure. And it changed my life. And again, maybe it's not for everyone. Maybe someone's absolutely not kinesthetic. I'm not saying it's a solve all, but if you're feeling like life is not a living, breathing, moving, passionate thing, give palpation a try. There's, as Rick said, there's just the gamut runs from, all right, is it hot or cold, to someone pulling gizzards out of your neck, the more extreme form. It's a pretty broad, I'm saying, but I'd say put your feet in lots of waters. I've been through all kinds of different styles before I settled into what I'm doing. Don't be afraid. I remember in school, the teachers, this is, my second year, or in the third year, I put up Kiko cliff notes up on the clinic computer. So I was, again, really into Kiko second and third year. And people would say, oh, I'm going to send you this person with back pain because you're really good with pain. I'm like, no, yeah, but if you can't treat pain, you can't treat spiritual, emotional. It's like, I'm not treating the pain. You're getting rid of, whatever with Kiko style, you're getting rid of some stuff on the abdomen. And I remember that a lot of people started buying the books. So a group of like 25 people got together and they all put in an order for, Kiko strategies or something. And I think everyone but one never put it into practice because one of the well-known teachers there said, pass your exams first. Pass your exams. You're at school, you got to pass the national exams and then you do what you want to do. No, your life has been sucked out of you by then, and you may not have much passion left to pursue anything in acupuncture. I'd say while you're in school, pursue your passion. Yeah, you got to pass the exams, but if you find something's lifeless, don't listen to the teacher that says, just pass your exams, then do what you want to do. No, you've got to find life now. Don't wait. Oh, once I'm out of school, then I'll do it. Then you're worried about money. Then you're worried about what am I going to do to make a living? While you've still got that emotion and that drive, use it and take it into a good direction.
Yeah, and get your hands in it, right? Whatever it is, like you all said, explore whatever it is you're going to explore. I think I've said on this podcast in the past, so I apologize for restating, but one of my favorite things from Shudo Denmai Sensei is that it's Hare wa Hito Nari, right? Acupuncture is an expression of your humanity. So it's an expression of yourself. And whatever form of palpation you get in, once you really get into this hands-on connection with your patient, you're going to much better be able to express yourself through your treatments. And that's only going to allow you to get better treatment effectiveness and better treatment results. And also a better connection, spoken and unspoken, with your patients.
Yeah, thank you, all of you, for this time today. I'm with you guys. If you're someone who's in school and you're thinking, I don't know if this is for me, I don't know how I'm going to get through it, the life is being sucked out of me, I would agree with what you guys are saying. Find the thing you love. Start now. As far as passing exams goes, look, everybody's taking cram studies anyway to pass those things, right? It's a certain bar. You will pass it. Honestly, a lot of the stuff on the exam isn't going to help you that much in clinic. But you got to pass it because that's just the way the world is. I'm not going to get into all the, hows, whys, and wherefores of that. But look, you'll be able to pass the exam if you study for it. But you don't need 3 years of study to pass the exam. You do need to put your heart where you want it to be. So put your hands on people, love what you do, figure out what you love, and help the people around you is another really important piece. all you guys, speaking of helping people, all you guys, I know you got books or classes or different kinds of things. We're not going to take up time right here to say, oh, go to my website for blah, blah. I'll have all that stuff on the show notes page. If you want to find out what Slate and Mark and Rick are up to, maybe get in touch with them, learn from them, read the books they got, you can do that. It'll be on the website. Just go to the show notes page. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has really been a wonderful time. And thank you for your time, attention, and heart. On we go.
Thank you, Michael, for all you do for the community. And you've got the most wonderful interview demeanor, so human, so real, and so peaceful, but not boring. Peaceful, but charismatic at the same time. So thank you for what you're doing.
A darn good listener indeed he is. Great to meet you guys too.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Rick and Mark.
All right, guys. Till next time. Here's something I often lose sight of in my hurry to suss out a diagnosis. Palpation isn't about finding information. It's about entering a relationship with the body, with the person, with something that communicates before words ever really show up. Palpation asks us to slow down, to set aside the desire to explain too quickly, to slow down enough to sense and let the body show us what cannot be said with words. What I appreciate most is how palpation keeps acupuncture grounded. Instead of living in a mental model, we are connected in real time. Diagnosis and treatment, they blur together. We're not just applying points. We're having a conversation that's guided by sensation, response, and change. There's also something deeply human about this. In a world where so many people are talked at, scanned, or squeezed into a diagnostic code, palpation brings us back into contact with something essentially human that all too often is far removed from modern medicine. Maybe, and more importantly for me, it keeps me present and reminds me that there is a world of experience that has nothing to do with words. You've made it all the way through this episode. I suspect there's something in this conversation that held your attention, maybe gave you some unexpected insight or reminded you of something that you know well and appreciate. Why not seize the moment now and share this podcast with a friend? They'll be glad to know that you're thinking about them. Geological is a team effort. Ruth Asparis and Ann Manalo are our editors. Neil Matthews is the WordPress dude who tames the tech. Lauren Delfonzio keeps us all organized, and Sharon Sherman, who brings her eye for detail and reliably asks the troublesomely helpful questions. If you love the podcast and would like to contribute financially to help keep the microphones hot and the servers juiced up, become a member. There's some benefits too. Details are on the website.